Good afternoon. Welcome to our Bring Your Light, Faith, and Mental Health virtual event. Thank you all for joining. My name is Dr. Torian Easterling. I am the Deputy Commissioner for the Center for Health Equity and Community Wellness at the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. First, I would like to thank our First Lady, Shirlane McCray, for convening everyone. Also to Kay Warren and Reverend Kendra Frazier for being the featured speakers. Thank you also to our sponsors who are bringing their light by providing COVID-19 relief. UJA Federation of New York, LEAD NYC, and New York Disaster Interfaith Services. I'm excited to have this conversation about faith, mental health, and resiliency in these unprecedented times. Our faith communities have always been a source of strength and resilience for the people of our city, and now we need them more than ever. Join the discussion on social media. How do you hashtag bring your light to your community? Tell us and tag at NYC First Lady. Later on, we will hear from you, the audience, and take a few questions that you all sent in. Now we will have an opening prayer from Dr. Umar Masarikar, President of Hindu Society of North America. I know her uplifting, inspirational words will set the tone for this afternoon. Thank you.
Namaste. My name is Dr. Uma Maisureka, President of the Hindu Temple Society of North America in Flushing, New York. I'm going to be chanting a prayer. We will all pray to God Almighty to shower His grace and blessings on all the living beings in the universe by getting rid of this pandemic which has taken away many lives. May their souls rest in peace, and may you give mental and physical strength to heal the pains and sorrows of their families and loved ones. O Lord, you are the knower and the one to be known. You are the supreme goal. The universe is pervaded by you. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shantihi. Om Peace, Peace, and Peace.
Running a small business is anxiety causing in and of itself, but when you add a pandemic, you lose sleep at night. My name is James Kim, and I'm an owner of a restaurant called Sons of Thunder, along with my brother John. COVID became real for us when a couple of friends of ours who owned restaurants in the Chinatown area of New York City started to see real dips in sales, and us being perceived as an Asian, at least a Hawaiian restaurant, we had the sinking feeling that we might not be too far behind them. Sure, what was going through my mind when you lose 70% of your business? It's hard to put that into words. You wonder, are we ever coming back from this? Is this the new normal? How does this work? I mean, the billion questions, rent, how do you pay your people? You just keep playing it in your mind, You start to get nervous and anxious about the long-term effects of something that we've never really dealt with before. As soon as stuff was happening, our faith community reached out to us, especially my pastor, Christian Hernandez. He pastors a church out in Astoria called Hope Astoria. He texts me virtually every day telling me he's praying for me, and he and Hope have been an immense source of support for me personally, and by extension, the team. Through one of the texts, Christian asked, hey, is there any way we can help the business? And then also, how can we help Frontlines? And I said, well, doctors and nurses aren't eating because, they don't have the time even. And he floated the idea of making a donation to us to be able to feed some of them, knowing that we had relationships with NYU. So out of his own pocket, I think he donated something like $200. And we were able to feed about 30, 40 of the frontline workers with that donation. And we posted it on Instagram and through some of our channels, and over the past several weeks we raised close to $30,000. And Hope Astoria eventually ended up donating another $4,000. And up to this point we've done over 3,000 meals. That was actually pretty calm.
Pretty calm?
Yeah. I'm pretty proud of them. They had orders coming in on top, and yeah, they're good now. This has been the drill for the past 2 months. Hey Jen, this is James from Sons of Thunder. We're at the main lobby entrance. When you're as stressed as you are, as the frontline workers have been, to know that you don't have to think about food. that day when you go into work is tremendous. To be fed is not just to feed your body, but your soul and your spirit. We really believe that. And so we've heard tremendous feedback from the front lines that it's not only practically supportive, but morale-wise, it's been huge for them. And I think there can't be enough said about being able to do something you love when everything around you is falling apart for some. And so we're so indebted to our community who have donated tens of thousands of dollars, not only to us but other restaurants, to be able to not only support the front lines but the restaurants themselves. We're just super, super thankful. For our spiritual community who's been praying for us, supporting us financially, calling us, texting us. It's everything. Super grateful.
What a powerful story of how New Yorkers, despite struggling with the stress and anxiety of the pandemic, are stepping up to help feed our neighbors on the front lines. Stories like this will continue to inspire all of us to look beyond ourselves and find strength. And with that, I would like to introduce the First Lady of New York City, Chirlane McCray. First Lady McCray is nationally recognized as a powerful champion for mental health reform and dubbed one of Times Magazine's 50 most influential people in healthcare for 2018. First Lady McCray has created Thrive NYC, the most comprehensive mental health plan of any city or state in this nation. She also spearheads the city's Thrive Coalition with more than 200 mayors, county officials, and thought leaders from all 50 states, advocating for a more integrated and better funded behavioral health system. I am truly inspired by First Lady McCray as I have worked with her closely as we help to launch Sisters Thrive and Brothers Thrive, tailoring messaging and approaches in African American communities. With that, I would like to introduce our First Lady, Chirlane McCray.
Hello, everyone. Hola a todos. Welcome to Bring Your Light, Faith and Mental Health in the Era of COVID-19. Thank you, Dr. Eastling, for that kind introduction. It is a blessing to have you serving our communities and our city. Thank you, Dr. Mysurika, for sparking our conversation with your powerful prayer. Did you all bring your light to this gathering? I hope so. Even if your light is wavering and not very bright now, our hope is that it will blaze anew by the end of this hour. When I see New Yorkers like the Sons of Thunder doing what they can for their community, feeding people one poke bowl at a time, even as their own restaurant fights for survival and in the face of the scapegoating of Asian Americans, I feel joy and inspiration, and I feel it throughout my body. The Sons of Thunder remind us that even in despair, we have the power to help others. Thank you to all the faith leaders who are taking care of our spiritual and emotional health during this time. We may not be in the same boat, but we sure are in this storm together. And wherever we sit, it's hard to let go of what we cannot control. It's challenging to take care of ourselves when our routines have been erased. And it's frustrating to not be able to do as much as we'd like to. The glory of this season, this spring, is muted by mourning, by financial hardship and worries and physical separation. Every day is bringing us new challenges, with mental health care being the most frequently cited health need by community members working with our COVID-19 task force on racial inclusion and equity. Sadly, this rising tsunami of stress is likely to continue. And even those put on the brave face need emotional and spiritual care. All of our lives have been disrupted. The lives of a generation of brilliant young people have been put on pause. The elders we turn to for wisdom are in long-term isolation. Our heroic healthcare workers are suffering from burnout, finding it's not easy to turn off the horrors they have experienced. Our veterans, domestic violence survivors, store clerks, drivers, people experiencing homelessness, educators, those who are incarcerated, business owners, parents. And the COVID-19 deaths in the Latino and African American communities are so much higher than in other communities and have made brutally clear the price of unequal access to basic necessities like housing and healthcare and healthy food. We've always been able to measure the terrible consequences of racism in Black and brown bodies, and this time is no different. The long-term mental health consequences of these days of trauma will be widely and deeply felt. They are us. All of our lives have been disrupted, and we feel those tensions, the anxiety and the depression. We see the substance misuse and the distress and feel those feelings of worthlessness. Faith leaders have a special role to play, especially when it comes to breaking down the stigma. But you cannot pour from an empty cup. So we ask you, please tend to your own care first. Make sure you are staying healthy in body, mind, and spirit. We need you today, tomorrow, and for a long time to come. In the words of the poet Theodore Roitke, deep in their roots, all flowers keep the light. Even in the worst of times, in the deep well of our hearts, there is light, warmth, and strength, coming not from above or below, but from within. We must have faith. Nosotros debemos tener fe. Faith in our fellow human beings, faith in this community, faith that this great sorrow, this too shall pass. Today, we will share that optimism and hope and resources, along with strategies for coping that you can use and share. And it is in the spirit of sharing wisdom to build inner strength and mental health resilience that I want to welcome Kay Warren into this conversation. Kay is a great faith leader, mental health advocate, and co-founder of Saddleback Church, one of the largest congregations in the country. And I am so happy to have known Kay for a few years now, with it being, I think about 2 years since we last had one of our live stream conversations. Welcome, Kay. How are you feeling today?
I am doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be with you, First Lady. I was thrilled for this opportunity to be a part of this really significant event and encouraging fellow faith leaders as they do their best giving to the people of New York City. I told you in a previous conversation that we think of you all every day. It's impossible not to think about the people of New York City, and you just remain in our hearts and our prayers, and so it's very tender to me to be a part of this. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to see you, even virtually. I've always enjoyed our conversations, and I wonder if you can share with us some of the personal experiences that led you to start Saddleback's Hope for Mental Health initiative.
Yes, well, it came out of the most personal experience that I've ever had, and that was after the loss of our youngest son, Matthew, to suicide in 2013. Up to that point, I'd been an advocate for people living with HIV and for orphans and vulnerable children, work that I had loved. But the day that my son took his life, I knew that everything was changing. I knew that my advocacy and my passion and my compassion was going to shift toward people living with particularly serious mental illness, which my son had. And his death crushed us. It was the hardest day of my life. It was the most, I can't imagine anything else ever happening that could be as catastrophic and devastating as his death. And, you know, it's not over. It's been 7 years. And, you know, sometimes people who have not themselves experienced catastrophic loss ask well-meaning questions like, well, are you through it? Are you over it? You know, have you moved on? And that question used to make me angry. Now I realize it comes just from people who have not suffered that deep loss themselves. And I'm able to say, I will never get over the death of my son. but I am learning how to live with it, and I am learning that life can be good again. And then the next question people ask, because they see that I'm doing well, and they'll say, "How did you survive? How do you survive the suicide of someone you love and your child?" And what I've said is that I mean, we received an enormous outpouring of support, lots of kindness, lots of empathy and compassion, and good things from people. But as wonderful as all that has been, it really is my faith. It is because I have made a practice of, over the last 50 years, of sending my spiritual roots deep into what I experienced as the goodness and the love of God. And because I was convinced that life could be good again, that even though there were terrible mysteries that remain, I don't know why my son died. I don't know why those prayers for healing weren't answered. I can't explain all of that. But what has not been shaken is my confidence in that God is good. And because of that, when breast cancer and melanoma and suicide have been personal experiences, the tree of my faith has not been yanked out. And it's because those roots, I have intentionally and deliberately put the roots of my spiritual life and my faith deep into God's goodness and his love. And if I have a life message now, besides trying to call faith leaders to really care for and engage with people living with mental illness and their families, it's that it's never too late to develop spiritual roots. It's never too late to start building a root system that will hold you no matter what else externally happens, no matter what else comes into our lives. When you've got a strong spiritual root system, you can survive. You can survive, and not just survive, you can thrive again. And that has led me to the work that I've done in the last 7 years of building a mental health ministry, expanding it at Saddleback Church, calling faith leaders around the world to truly engage with people who are living with mental illness, become a warm and welcoming place, be a place where they can be fully incorporated, serve them, love them, minister to them, connect them with resources. And that has brought some meaning to the pain and the loss of losing our son.
Thank you, Kay, for sharing what has to be a painful story to tell over and over again. But I appreciate how you remind us that it really does take deep roots to help us get through catastrophic circumstances, and that those roots that we have in our faith can grow and help us be able to bend and not break when the world is just a terrible place to be in from day to day, when we suffer from loss and from all kinds of hardship. Can you share with us some of the resources that may be available from your national point of view?
Sure.
Resources that are available for us to take care of our mental health?
Yeah, there are several things that I would really love to recommend to faith leaders, especially in this time when we are not able to meet very freely, and we don't really know how long some of those limitations are going to be necessary. But that doesn't mean that church or faith life has to shut down. It just means we have to be creative in how we continue to minister to people. And some of the resources, particularly around mental health, is there are some great support groups online that existed before the time of COVID-19, and so they're established, they've been around. There are a couple that I would really recommend. There's one called Fresh Hope, and it is an online support group for people living with particularly bipolar disorder. There's also one from the Mental Health Grace Alliance. They have several online groups that are at Mental Health Grace Alliance. There is the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, so DBS Alliance, and I believe they have groups meeting online like 5 days a week. Then there's when people have experienced deep grief in this time. Grief Share is a faith-based organization that is dedicated to helping people who've lost for any cause, any reason, to connect with others in their time of grief, how to find support. So Grief Share. There's also the Compassionate Friends, which is a long-standing organization that helps parents, grandparents in the loss of a child or a grandchild. So these are groups that are already meeting online. So maybe your faith community doesn't have any mental health support groups already established, but these are ones that are online that you could access. One that I really recommend for people who, we call it people who have hurts, habits, and hangups. And it's called Celebrate Recovery, which is a faith-based 12-step program. It's been around for about 30 years, and they are meeting online, and you can go to their website and find how to join a group now. Because as we all know, the stress of this time is really increasing the difficulty some people are having maintaining their sobriety. Very understandable that all the extra stress and difficulty is creating, it's harder to maintain sobriety. And Celebrate Recovery, it's right now they're calling it CRCR, Celebrate Recovery COVID Response. And those are online groups that anybody could be a part of. I'm also thinking of some online counseling. I mean, a lot of insurance companies are providing telehealth medicine, telehealth mental health appointments. But if somebody doesn't necessarily have that through their insurance, or it's at a cost that's prohibitive, there's an online counseling service called BetterHelp.com. And they have thousands of licensed mental health professionals. You can sign in, and for a very low cost, have access to counseling and therapy. There's a website I love called mantherapy.org, and it is because men, many women are okay to sit in a circle and talk about their hurts or their problems. That's not necessarily a format that a lot of men feel comfortable with, but there's this great website where men who might be particularly struggling with their mental health right now could go and get some help. And then one other thing that we do at Saddleback is once a month we have a program. It's now bi-weekly, but it used to just be once a month, called Hope for Mental Health Community, where we bring in professionals in the field, Dr. Bruce Perry, Dr. Warren Kinghorn, Dr. Glenda Wren, just great people in the field of mental health who come share accurate psychoeducation. People have the opportunity to hear it, and they get to share with each other. They sit around tables, they build community. Well, we can't do that in person right now, but it's online. So you could watch, kwarren.com, my website, and see all of our archived. So maybe your faith community would like to have some great mental health resources, but you don't know how to access them right now, or hear people on that. It's free. Do a watch party, listen to that. I mean, there's so many. My website's got more, so I don't think we have time to go through them all. But those are just some things that I'm thinking that are pre-existing, that anyone in the faith community could access free of cost and easily accessible.
Wow. Well, thank you. Those are a lot of resources, an abundance of resources, and so many that I had never heard of before. Thank you for that. And we will make all of those resources available online so that people can access them. I know that not everybody can keep up taking notes. So we will make sure that we have a listing, and kwarren.com is your website. So people can also go to Kay's website and see what's available there. Thank you for that. Okay, I'd love to hear a little bit more about Dr. Bruce Perry and his trauma-informed model. We just have a few minutes, but I'm sure that I was so moved by your description of who he was and what he's been able to do. Can you tell us some of those, a little bit about his life and what he's done?
Dr. Bruce Perry is he's a child trauma specialist, but researcher, but he came to this work through his own loss, terrible loss and tragedy, and knows trauma firsthand. And over the years, as he has developed the neurosequential model and the neurosequential network of explaining in terms, I mean, obviously he works with professionals, but for lay people like myself, I'm not a mental health professional, and sometimes the science of how the brain works can get over my head, but he explains it in such a simple way. And recently I've been learning from him about what the brain does, how it reacts when we're under stress. And when stress is part, which we're all living with anyway, but in these particular times, how that begins to affect how we think, which then begins to affect how we feel, and then how we act. And if there was ever a time where leadership needs to be calm and regulated and focused and compassionate, it's now. And Dr. Perry explains how we have this privilege when we really are focusing on regulating our own selves, our own minds. Then when we bring that into our families, because we're living in the tension of being all together more than we're used to. And when an adult becomes dysregulated or very emotional and can't think straight anymore, how can we possibly regulate our children? How can we regulate our roommates? How can we regulate our partners when we are going to pieces? And so he really gives a lot of encouragement and hope for ways that we can learn how to the things that we do every day by establishing routine, by what he calls dosing and spacing. Maybe you go for a 30-minute walk and then sit in front of your computer for 8 hours. And he says that's not really helpful. What's more helpful is to take a 5-minute break and then come back and sit down and work for a while. And then in an hour, take another 5-minute break, walk around your apartment or walk around outside. That dosing of that is actually more beneficial, keeping our brains regulated so that we can think, so that we can feel, and then we can begin to behave in ways that just keep the water level more calm rather than us falling apart with anxiety. It's not that we don't feel anxious. And as faith leaders, we have to acknowledge that with our congregations. We don't have to be these pillars of strength that deny that we get frightened, or deny that we feel anxious, or deny that there aren't nights we don't sleep very well. What people really need from us is to bring our authenticity, our, yes, I get scared too. Yes, I'm not sure what the future holds. I don't know exactly what it's all going to look like, but to bring people back then to that regulated place of, we're in this together. We have, in my faith tradition, I have a God who is still in control. He cannot be shaken, and therefore I can remain calm. I can remain certain that good times are ahead. One of the things that I've learned through grief work, and I'll close with this, First Lady, is after my son died, I was pretty certain I could never be truly happy again. I knew life would never be the same again. I knew that, but I was not sure that it could ever be good. And what I have learned is that as long as I demand that life remain as it always was, that's the only way I can be happy, I'm going to be stuck. And I've learned through the death of my son that yes, life will never look the same, but it can be good again. And I would say that's my message to the faith leaders. It's to all of us, is that we not get stuck in the place of thinking, well, if life doesn't look like it always did before COVID-19, then I can never be happy again. The reality is life may not look exactly the same again, but life can and will be good again. And that's the message that we share with each other.
Thank you so much, Kay. You've given us a lot to think about, and I already feel better. I feel like you're filling up my cup. So thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for the privilege.
Sending you a big hug.
You too. Woohoo!
Thank you both. Especially thank you, Kay Warren. I want to commend you for sharing your personal story. Many people are listening and are gaining strength and encouragement in what you have said today. Next, the First Lady will be speaking to Reverend Kendra Frazier, Executive Director of First Corinthians Baptist Church, Hope Center. Kendra, a 2018 recipient of the National Association on Mental Illness Multicultural Award, is a licensed master social worker, lecturer at Columbia University, and associate pastor of Congregational Care and Wellness at First Corinthians Baptist Church. She is well known for her work in removing barriers to mental health access for Black and Brown communities, and has been featured in multiple print and digital publications, including Vice Magazine, New York Times, and Sojourners Magazine. The Hope Center works to minimize stigma in Black and Brown communities when seeking mental health services, so this will surely be an insightful conversation. I turn it over to you, First Lady.
Hello, Reverend Frazier. It's so nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you as well, First Lady.
Can you tell us a little bit about the origin of the Hope Center?
Absolutely. The Hope Center is a manifestation of the vision of our senior pastor, Michael Walren, to support the community of Harlem in being well and whole. Almost over a decade ago, I was invited to be the executive director of Hope Center Harlem. In 2016, we actually started. We have been able to grow beyond our expectations in just under 4 years. We have been able to partner with Columbia University, Walden University, Rutgers University, and Manhattan College in terms of building a clinical team. And so we utilize clinical interns. We have the gift of being able to offer up to 10 sessions for free of individual, couples, and family counseling. And it has been such a tremendous gift to our community, as well as to the Hope Center and the clinical team of the Hope Center, because we learn so much by being able to serve in this way.
Have you had difficulty getting people into the doors? There's such a stigma within our communities around mental health. I wonder if it's been hard to get people in the door.
That is a great question. It has not been difficult to get people into the door at Hope Center Harlem. I believe that what makes us so unique is that Pastor Mike has done a wonderful job building trust in the community, because we are a faith community that serves, and we serve well. And because we at the Hope Center see faith as a protective factor, people know that they can bring their full selves to the table, as Kay spoke about earlier, in terms of practicing vulnerability. And that's something that we do in our faith community. And so we have not had any challenges getting people to come into the door, although the stigma of mental health is so high. What we found is that people rush to our doors. We keep a wait list of 80 plus people month to month at the Hope Center, which speaks to the great need. It also speaks to our need to continue to raise funding in an effort to build our capacity.
That is amazing. 80 people.
Yeah.
That's a huge need. But I commend you, I praise you for the work that you're doing. It really speaks to how powerful it is when people are able to connect with people that they already know, people that they trust, to discuss issues that are so personal. I like that phrase that you use, practicing vulnerability. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Thank you for asking. I have been ruminating and meditating and praying over the past week on what it means to walk in the light. And walking in the light for me, or even bringing the light, means that we practice vulnerability. Brene Brown talks about living a whole life. I believe that living a wholehearted life is also connected to bringing the light and practicing vulnerability. This season that we're in is a season that is bringing the shadowy parts and the light parts of humanity to bear. We see the worst of humanity times, and we see the best of humanity. What I believe in practicing vulnerability in this moment is that we release that we have on how people are choosing to cope during this unprecedented time, a time we've never seen before, a time we've never been to before. So remembering that we all are making different choices. This is a moment to be vulnerable and to deepen our compassion, to deepen our grace, and to deepen our mercy.
Mm-hmm. How are you dealing personally and professionally with the devastating losses in our Black and Brown communities? I myself find it just so painful to hear those statistics and know that, you know, they're not just numbers, that these are grandmothers and grandfathers and sisters and cousins, so many people that we know who have passed on because of this disease, but not just because of this disease, because of, decades, centuries of neglect in our communities. How do you deal with that?
Thank you. It's a question. As you know, First Lady, Upper Manhattan has been the hardest hit in New York. And as you also stated, we have experienced as a community in of Black and Brown people, historical trauma and atrocities, systemic racism that has also been death dealing to us. So we have been here before in a sense, and at the same time, it is also very painful. What we are relying on in this moment, what I am relying on, is the resilience of people to practice their spirituality in ways that call them to turn their pain points into power. This is a moment for us to step into our power in the midst of the sadness, in the midst of the pain, to remember that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind.
What are some of the simple, holistic self-care tips that people who are tuning in from home can do? What kinds of things can they do to find ways to shine their light during this difficult time?
Some of the things that people can do to shine their light at this point in time is to take deep breaths.
Mhm.
Deep breaths support us in oxygenating our brain cells, which helps us slow down despite the pain that is present, as well as the challenges that are in this moment. Deep breaths will allow us to not only hold the pain, allow us to hold the passion of our breaths, because every breath counts and matters. Even in this moment when there is death all around us, our breath connects us to God. And it's important for us not to forget that. Also, it is important for people to not shy away from the vulnerable parts of themselves. This is the opportunity that has been created for all of us to take a deep dive into our healing, a deep dive into reconciliation, a deep dive into the way that we build relationships. As a matter of fact, just the other night, I was with my family here in Charlotte, North Carolina, celebrating a cousin's birthday, and my sister brought Red Table Talk cards, which is Red Table Talk is a web series that Jada Pinkett Smith and her daughter host, and these cards supported us in knowing each other in new and different ways. This is the opportunity for us to be more human. That is the thing that Pastor Mike has created for First Corinthian Baptist Church in this season, as well as last year, and it has been a theme that we've continued throughout this year, because this world needs us to dig more deeper into our humanity, to invite others to do the same.
That's a great idea. You talked about doing dinner parties. We had the opportunity to speak yesterday or the day before. Is that something that anyone can do with their family and friends?
Absolutely. That is something that they can do with their family and friends, virtual Sunday dinners. It was also a moment that I had touched the fragility of my mental health, as it is a lot to hold being a pastor, as well as being an executive director of a mental health facility. And in addition to that, being the person that also clinically supervises my interns, as well as the one that reads through their notes. And I'm also providing pastoral sessions, as well as have to keep up with programming during this time. I needed my family. The month of April, it was a very to hold space for me in ways that I did not have in New York. So those virtual Sunday dinners became an opportunity for me to build community in new ways. I remember talking to you about the gift and the challenge of this moment. It has been a gift to connect with my family in new ways, to connect with friends in new ways, and to invite myself to take a pause, because it can be easy to forget about yourself, especially if you are in the helping field. And so it has been a wonderful opportunity to have the virtual Sunday dinners with my family.
I really enjoyed talking with you about, it sounds counterintuitive, but the gifts of COVID-19. But certainly those dinner parties and the chance to reflect, the deepening of relationships. There are many gifts of this season that we cannot overlook. There's so many blessings in our life, always, if we are present and able to see them. And thank you so much,
Thank you.
Devin, for
An honor to be present with you.
joining us in this conversation, for bringing your light, which you have blazing. I hope that we have an opportunity to talk again soon.
I hope so too. Thank you so much, First Lady.
Thank you. Big hug.
Hugs back.
Thank you, First Lady, Kay Warren, Reverend Frazier. I've been uplifted by what you all shared today. It's important to have these conversations and continue to break down the fallacy that faith and mental health are mutually exclusive. That's why I'm excited for your next podcast, First Lady, which I know is airing in 2 days, where you will continue this conversation with New York City faith leaders. And so I encourage everyone to check out Thrive with Charlene McCray. But now we're going to go into the questions and answer portion of today's event. We have selected a few questions from you, the audience, to hear from our panelists. And so our first question today is for you, First Lady. What are plans to support long-term efforts by faith-based organizations who may need help addressing the needs of their community now and in the future?
Dr. Easterling, the city has always recognized the importance of our faith community. We understand that when we bring our people together, that they're even stronger, because people have so many talents and so many strengths, but not necessarily in the same area. So we've already been working closely with our faith leaders, many of whom are on this call. And one of my suggestions is that if you don't have an interfaith council or group, start one. Hold a virtual community dinner. Help each other with technology, hold services, reflections, readings, share music together, help each other learn how to solicit donations online. All of that can be done. Another thing that we've done, which is a little old school, but I like it because I think that not everyone wants to see their face online, is to set up a phone tree. Again, it may be a little old school, but it can be such a critical connection for people who are vulnerable, especially those who may not be tech savvy, like some of our elders. Check in twice a day, in the morning or in the evening, asking somebody, how you feel today? Do you have your groceries? Do you need any medications? It can mean so much and can help with routine for people who are isolated. If you're in New York City, we do have a helpline. I call it a helpline because it's not just for emergencies. Anyone can call 1-888-NYC-WELL to get mental health support and connections to a therapist or other resources. Or you can go to the Thrive website. And we're also putting together new resources. In a couple of weeks, we will have a mental health toolkit for faith and community leaders, which we will make available. I also want to make sure everyone knows that the National Alliance on Mental Illness, that's NAMI, has a FaithNet program. And the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, otherwise known as SAMHSA, also has a faith-based initiative for mental health and substance misuse treatment. So I hope you can see their contact information up on screen now, and we will make sure that it is included in all the social media postings from this event. Thank you.
Great. Those sound like really great resources. And I also just want to emphasize, I think the more that we are reestablishing our social connections virtually, and also I just want to put a plug in for regular snail mail. I received multiple cards over the last couple of weeks for no other reason, just to say hello. From my mother, So I think, snail mail still works, just stamp, and I think we could, restart something nationally here. So I agree. Thank you so much, First Lady. So Reverend Frazier, I want to direct this next question to you. We know that clergy are often support systems for so many, but it is equally important that they take care of themselves. What are best practices for clergy to prevent compassion fatigue?
I believe the best practices for clergy to prevent compassion fatigue is to be vulnerable, transparent, and honest with a trusted circle of friends and family, to ask for help when you need it. It is also an opportunity for you to get access to mental health providers during this time. I happen to be a clinical social worker, and working bivocationally has helped me a great deal to take care of myself. In this season, I was able to connect back with my own therapist, and it has been such a gift for me. So I would invite clergy to do that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I think we're very clear that our faith-based communities are so important, and we need them now more than ever. But we also need them to stay healthy, both mentally and physically. And so, thank you for sharing those best practices. So we're going to move on to the next question, and we have a few more moments. So Kay, Saddleback does so much important work with our youth. What resources exist to help youth with their mental health during this time?
Thank you so much for asking that. And there are several, and some that I'll be able to list right now, and some of the others maybe can be in the program notes later. But one of the programs that I have really appreciated is called Sources of Strength. And it is what's called an upstream effort at suicide prevention. It takes its focus. It's a evidence-based program that focuses on the power of social networking among peers to encourage each other to recognize their source of strength. Sometimes when we're in crisis, particularly I think youth who might not have even the experience of those of us, of adults who've gone through many life crises and developed our go-to list of when we're having a difficult time. Students are in that process of building that list for themselves, if you will. And Sources of Strength helps students identify and it's going to be different for each student. Some have really strong family relationships. Some really don't. Their stronger relationships are with their friends. But it's going through about 7 or 8 different areas that students can focus on when they're finding themselves in a stressful time. I do have this source of strength. I do have teachers that listen to me. I do have access to medical care. I do have the ability to be generous, which, believe it or not, is a source of strength. I do have a good relationship, or sort of good, with my family. I do have spirituality. And so that's a program that I really love to see developed in the school systems as time goes forward. But taking that idea of helping youth identify what are their sources of strength that they currently have, what are the ones they can rely on right now, and what are the ones they can build. And when it comes to spirituality, I think the message that we are trying to make sure we are communicating to the young ones, to the primary school age, to all the way up through college, are these 5 basic truths that if you can build your life on these sources of strength, this will help you not only now as a student, but as you become an adult. And that is that you are loved. You are loved. You have a purpose in life. You truly matter. You're here for a reason. You belong. I think that's one of the deepest aches of us as human beings, is feeling like we don't belong. And to have that message, no, you belong. And you have a choice. Yes, some things may have happened to you. Some things may be happening right now that you don't know what to do with. But you still have some choices you can make, even within those difficult circumstances. And then the 5th message I think that we convey is you are needed. I truly, sometimes students feel such a lack of self-worth. They compare themselves to somebody who's more athletic, somebody who's smarter, somebody who is maybe better looking. And to realize, no, you have a unique gift. As we've been talking here, you have a unique light to bring to this world, and you are needed. So conveying that message over and over to students in every way possible. Really recommend the youth mental health first aid training for the clergy. If you're not really sure you understand much about mental health, it's a great introductory way to get a handle and to work with students. I think the Teen Line, teenonline.org is a great place for students to connect with other students. It's peer-to-peer trained youth who then talk to other youth who are in crisis. So that's teenonline.org. I can't not mention, pardon me, the suicide text line, where if a student is really feeling like they might not be able to make it through this moment, to text home to 741-741. There just are always people, just remember there are always people who want to help. And to convey that message to students. There's a whole lot more, but I probably would conclude that with the message of that it's never too late to start developing spiritual roots, and it's never too early to start developing spiritual roots, because that forms the resilience and the sense of well-being that helps you today, tomorrow, and into your future.
Well, I want to thank the three of you again, First Lady Kay Warren and Reverend Frazier. This has been not only uplifting and powerful, but certainly has been such an important moment just as we are navigating these challenging times. And so just personally, thank you, and I'm sure thank you on behalf of everyone who has joined us today. Now I would like to introduce actor and singer Will Dow to give us a musical rendition.
I want to thank First Lady McCray and her guests for leading this important conversation. I hope this next song uplifts you and encourages you to follow your light. I see trees of green, red roses too. I watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, bright blessed day and dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll never know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
What a beautiful rendition of What a Wonderful World. Thank you, Will Dow. The incredible stories, songs, and conversations we've heard today remind us of the power of coming together and sharing our light with each other. As faith and community leaders across the city, I know you share our commitment to protecting the health of New Yorkers. So I would like to share some information about a city-led program that is working to do exactly that during this pandemic. The Test and Trace Corps works to stop the spread of COVID to help us get back into our communities. The Corps connects New Yorkers with free testing for COVID-19, makes sure anyone with the virus gets the care that they need to safely isolate from their family to prevent the spread, and reaches out to those who had close contact with someone testing positive so that those contacts can get tested and get the help that they need. Getting tested for COVID is how we can care for each other in this challenging time to protect our loved ones and ourselves. Get tested for COVID today. If you have symptoms like light fever, dry cough, shortness of breath, loss of smell, or appetite, or if you have a close contact with someone who tested positive for COVID-19. If you are someone who works at a nursing home, shelter, or adult care facility, or you are a first responder or health care worker, you can also get tested. To find your neighborhood testing, call 311 or visit nyc.gov/COVID test. Finally, this conversation has shown the importance of speaking up about mental health. There are many resources that you've heard today that are available at the local and national levels to help. Just to name a few and remind you, NYC Well for mental health care, which is offered in 200 different languages. Thrive NYC mental health programs are available online and are virtual. At the national level, SAMHSA Disaster Hotline is also available, as well as their faith-based and community initiatives. You also heard about the National Alliance on Mental Health Interfaith Network. Please visit these organizations and networks. These are all valuable resources. I would like to thank the First Lady for convening us for a powerful and inspiring event today. I also would like to thank Kay Warren and Reverend Frazier for joining this conversation. But most importantly, I want to thank you, the audience, for being so engaging, sending in your questions, sending in your comments, and most importantly, bringing your light. Let's continue this conversation. Send a tweet, and remember to #BringYourLight and tag @NYC First Lady. Thank you all.